A mother's love for her child knows no bounds, but what happens when that love leads her to uncover something she was never meant to see? In a heart-stopping twist, a grieving mother takes the unimaginable step of placing a hidden camera in her son's coffin, desperate for answers she could never get while he was alive. What she discovers next will leave you speechless. It all started when her son passed away under mysterious circumstances. His death left a gaping hole in her heart, and with no closure or answers, she was haunted by the questions surrounding his final days. With an overwhelming need for truth, she made a choice that would change everything. She set up the camera. But what she saw on that footage, well, it was more than she ever bargained for. What was supposed to be a quiet, somber farewell turned into a chilling revelation. And as the secrets behind her son's death began to unfold, she found herself in a dark and dangerous game she never could have imagined. What happened on that camera? The truth is far stranger and far more disturbing than she could have ever expected. Stay tuned to find out. The grief-stricken mother, who had once been a strong and loving woman, now found herself trapped in a storm of unanswered questions. Her son Michael had always been a quiet, introspective young man, but nothing about his death seemed to add up. He was healthy, full of life, with no signs of illness or any reason to believe his life would end so soon. The authorities had ruled it an accident, a simple case of a tragic fall. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. In the weeks that followed, the pain of losing her son was unbearable. She couldn't stop replaying their last conversation, looking for hidden meaning in every word he said. His death was a heavy weight on her chest, and every attempt to seek answers from the people closest to him only left her more confused. No one seemed to know anything, and the silence from his friends and co-workers felt more like a warning than a coincidence. It was during one sleepless night, consumed by thoughts of what might have happened, that she came up with the idea. The camera would give her the chance to see things no one else could, but nothing could prepare her for what she would uncover next. What secrets had her son been hiding, and who was really behind his sudden death? As the camera footage began to play, the mother's heart raced with anticipation. She had no idea what to expect. Was this just her own need for closure playing tricks on her, or was there something more? The first few moments seemed like nothing more than the peaceful stillness of her son lying in his coffin. The room, quiet and somber, reflected the finality of his passing. But then something strange caught her eye. A shadow moved across the frame. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make her freeze. She rewound the footage, watching it again and again. The shadow wasn't a trick of the light, and it wasn't a glitch in the recording. It was a figure. Someone had entered the room, hidden from view in the dark corners of the funeral home. But who? Her hands trembled as she paused the video, zooming in on the shadowy outline. It was a figure she didn't recognize, but it seemed to hover near her son's coffin. The figure lingered for what felt like an eternity before stepping back into the shadows, disappearing from the camera's view. She knew something was wrong. Her gut told her that this wasn't just a random trespasser. Someone had been in that room with a purpose. As she looked closer, she noticed more. Small, almost imperceptible changes in the coffin itself, like someone had disturbed it. Her son's body had been arranged carefully, but now it was different. Desperation and fear set in. What if this person knew something? What if Michael had been trying to tell her something in his final days, and she had missed it? She had to know more, but the deeper she dug, the more dangerous it became. Every step she took led to new questions, and with each new piece of information, the truth seemed further out of reach. Was it possible someone close to her son had orchestrated his death, or was there something even darker at play? She reached out to Michael's best friend, a quiet young man named Aaron, who had been with him in the days leading up to his death. But when she asked about the strange figure in the footage, Aaron's reaction was unexpected. He seemed startled, almost too startled, and quickly changed the subject. It was then she realized there were people in Michael's life who knew far more than they were letting on. But as she pushed deeper into the mystery, she began to sense the danger closing in. Whoever was involved didn't want her to find out the truth, and now it seemed she was in their sights. As the days passed, the tension grew. The more the mother investigated, the more she realized that the people around her had secrets. Aaron, her son's best friend, had grown distant, and his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. He avoided her calls, and whenever they spoke, his answers were vague. Something was off. It wasn't just his reluctance to discuss Michael's death. It was his nervous energy, like he was hiding something. She knew she had to confront him again. One evening, she managed to get him to meet her in person. The moment he stepped into her living room, she could feel the tension in the air. He was fidgeting, avoiding her gaze, as if he knew what was coming. Without wasting time, she asked him directly about the shadowy figure she'd seen in the footage. His eyes widened, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in his expression. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I don't know what you're talking about," Aaron stammered, but his voice betrayed him. The way his hands trembled, the way he couldn't hold eye contact, everything about him screamed guilt. Then, just as she was about to press him further, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. Asterisk, stop looking. You're getting too close. Leave it alone before it's too late. Asterisk. Her heart skipped a beat. This was no longer just about seeking the truth, it was a warning. But who was behind it? Was someone trying to protect Aaron, or was he involved in something darker? The message left her with more questions than answers, and fear began to creep in. She had to be careful now. Whoever was behind this wasn't afraid to threaten her. But she couldn't stop now. She had already gone too far, and the secrets were about to unravel. She needed to confront Aaron, but before she could make a move, she received another shocking call. This time, it was from the funeral home. "Ma'am," the voice on the other end of the line said, sounding urgent, "you need to come down here. We found something you need to see." Her pulse raced. What had they discovered? Was this the final piece of the puzzle, or a trap set to draw her even deeper into a web of lies and danger? With every step she took toward the truth, the stakes grew higher. Whoever had been hiding behind the shadows wasn't going to let her uncover their secrets without a fight. And now it seemed they were ready for whatever it would take to keep the past buried. The mother's heart pounded as she raced to the funeral home. The message had been cryptic, but the urgency in the voice of the staff member left her no choice but to go. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking straight into a trap, yet the thought of being so close to the truth kept her moving forward. When she arrived, the funeral home was eerily quiet. It was a place she had visited just days ago, but it felt foreign now, darker somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. The staff member who had called her led her down a narrow hallway, his face tense and pale. "There's something you need to see," he repeated, almost whispering, as if afraid someone might overhear. He stopped in front of a small office, pushing open the door. Inside, a laptop was open on the desk, and on the screen was something that sent chills down her spine. It was another video, a second hidden camera recording. But this one wasn't from her son's coffin. It was taken from within the funeral home itself, showing her son, Michael, just hours before his death. She leaned in, her eyes scanning the footage. There was Michael sitting in a quiet corner, talking to someone. But the person sitting across from him wasn't anyone she recognized. The stranger was tall, cloaked in shadows, and wearing a hood that obscured their face. As the conversation continued, Michael's body language changed. His shoulders stiffened, his hands trembled. It was clear he was afraid of this person. The unease in his demeanor was undeniable. Then, the conversation took a sudden turn. Michael's voice, barely audible, trembled as he said, "I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's too much. They're watching me. They know everything." The mother's heart sank. Who was he talking to? And what was he so terrified of? Suddenly, there was a loud bang from behind her, and she spun around in shock. A shadow moved across the doorway, and before she could react, the staff member slammed the laptop shut. His face was now visibly pale, and his hands were shaking. "Listen," he said, his voice cracking. "I shouldn't have shown you this. You're in way over your head. There are things happening here that you don't understand. You need to leave. Now." The warning was clear. Whatever her son had gotten tangled up in, whatever dark forces he had uncovered, it was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And now it seemed like someone was trying to stop her from discovering the truth at all costs. As she walked out of the funeral home, the feeling of being watched pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. Someone didn't want her to find out what had really happened to Michael, and now she was more determined than ever to push through the terror and uncover the deadly game that had claimed her son's life. The drive back home was a blur, her thoughts racing faster than the car could travel. The funeral home staff's warning echoed in her mind, but it only fueled her determination. She had come too far, and she could feel the truth just out of reach. She had to finish this, no matter what. The moment she stepped inside her house, she locked the door behind her, making sure to close every window. The air felt thick, oppressive, like something was lurking just beyond her vision. But she couldn't back down now. She pulled out her phone and called Aaron once again, knowing she had to confront him one last time. This time, when he picked up, there was no avoiding it. The fear in his voice was unmistakable, but this time it was different. He sounded desperate. "You have to stop. Please. You don't know who you're dealing with." "I know more than you think," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I know about the meetings, the threats, and the people involved. What did Michael get mixed up in? Who was that person he was talking to?" Aaron paused, a long, painful silence stretching between them. Then, in a barely audible voice, he said, "It was me. I was the one he was afraid of. I never meant for it to go this far, but I had no choice. They had control over me too." Her stomach twisted, the words feeling like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? Who?" Aaron's voice cracked. "The people who run everything. They're everywhere. They know everything. Michael, he found out something he shouldn't have. And now they want you to stay quiet, too. If they find out you know, they'll..." Suddenly, the line went dead. Her breath caught in her throat. Aaron was involved. And who were these people he was talking about? The answers were slipping away faster than she could grasp them. She didn't have time to process it. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, the message wasn't from Aaron. It was from an unknown number, and the text was chilling. Asterisk, "You're too late. It's already started." Asterisk. Without warning, the lights in the house flickered, and the doorbell rang. Her pulse skyrocketed. She wasn't alone anymore. Whoever these people were, they had found her. The weight of the situation settled over her, but she wasn't ready to back down. She grabbed the hidden camera footage from Michael's coffin and hurried toward the door, preparing herself for whatever was about to happen. As she slowly opened the door, her heart nearly stopped. Standing there in the doorway was a man, his face obscured by a dark, hooded cloak. His presence was suffocating, like the air itself had thickened with malice. Without saying a word, he handed her a small, unmarked envelope. "Tell no one," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. "If you value your life." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving her standing there, the envelope now heavy in her hands. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. But as she opened it, her eyes went wide. Inside was a single photograph, the same figure from the hidden footage, but this time she recognized the face. It was her own. Her mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. The realization hit like a freight train. The person who had been controlling everything, the person who had orchestrated Michael's death, was someone much closer to her than she could have ever imagined. And as the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate, she finally understood. She had been part of the story all along.